Tonight I'm going to be talking all about how to end a challenge, and I've got my notes here, so I'm just going to grab those so I'm ready to go. But yeah, as many of you may be aware, Stephanie and I have been doing a 12-week challenge over the last, 12 weeks. And so, we got to sort of the start of the year. We'd, been enjoying ourselves, had our little break over Christmas and New Year, and we both decided that we wanted to do something to start the year. So my original intention, I'm just going to adjust this light. My original intention had been to just do no alcohol. All right, so I was going to do a no alcohol month, maybe a couple of months, just as a little bit of a reset. Right, I felt like I'd gotten into a habit of consuming more than I ideally would. It wasn't anything outrageous, it wasn't totally out of control, but it was more than I felt like was helping me achieve my goals. It was in alignment with my purpose, and I'll talk about what I mean by that shortly, because that's really important. So, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking I might just go a month or maybe a couple of months without alcohol, right? And then I mentioned that to Stephanie, and she said, well, I was thinking of doing something too. And she mentioned that she was thinking of doing the challenge I had done in the lead up to my 43rd birthday. And so I'll talk about what that entailed in just a second. However, Stephanie mentioned that. I said, well, part of my purpose is about creating a healthy world for my family to grow up in, or to grow old in. And so I decided that if that's what Stephanie wanted to do, then I wanted to support her. So I decided to jump in as well. And to be perfectly honest, at the time, thinking that I didn't really need to go as full on as that challenge was, that I was happy just to do a little bit less. And in hindsight, I realised that it was a great thing, that it was really good for me to do, and that it was more impactful than I thought it might be, and perhaps even that I had more improvements in me than I realised, and so it was definitely worthwhile doing. And so that's what we did. So we both launched into our what we called our 12 weeks of healthy play and creativity. So I'd called it a challenge. In fact, I think I'd called it my meaning of life challenge leading up to my 43rd birthday, just sort of playing on the idea of the meaning of life from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the answer to that, of course, being 43. And so I thought that was kind of a fun name, and that's what I called it. When Stephanie talked about doing it, she didn't like the idea of a challenge. And so apologies if you listened to my video a couple of months ago where I talked about starting this challenge, and you may have heard this story already, but she didn't like the idea of it being a challenge. She wanted it to be more suitable for her playful personality, and to have a name that would inspire her. And so, challenge inspired me. Healthy play and creativity was much more positive and inspiring for Stephanie, and so that's what we decided to call it. All right, and so over the last 12 weeks, we've been dairy free. Right? We've limited our snacks to just meats, nuts, vegetables, and limited amounts of fruit. Okay? We've been doing a fast, a 16-hour fast, 2 days a week. We've been doing playful exercise 6 times a week. Okay? And that wasn't necessarily huge amounts of exercise. That was sometimes a big CrossFit workout, sometimes much smaller in terms of a walk, or a 10-minute little exercise, or some body weight exercises sort of repeated 4 times throughout the day. We've been alcohol free for 12 weeks. We've had no caloric drinks for 12 weeks. So we both realised that we've been consuming more calories than we would ideally like from fruit, from drinks and beverages. And we knew that was a really easy way to get more calories than our bodies were designed to have into us. We were grain and pseudo-grain free. We were potato and sweet potato free, which we'd been consuming quite a bit of sweet potato, and so we realised that not doing that was going to be useful for us in terms of the idea of this challenge. And we were honey, dried fruit, and refined sugar free. So that was our challenge that we took on 12 weeks ago. Tomorrow is the last day of our 12 weeks, and so we're looking forward to that. I feel like there's been some really cool changes over the period of that 12 weeks. I've shared some of those along the journey. It's certainly been an interesting time for me in terms of the challenge, because I've had a lot going on over the last 12 weeks. Some of you may know I took on a new study in that I started learning tertiary education, or studying tertiary education at Curtin University, with the intention of becoming a lecturer and being able to teach at the Australian Chiropractic College, which I was very excited about. And so that's what I did. I started that study, and then shortly after, I got a job as a lecturer. So that was a bit more sudden than I had anticipated. So all of a sudden, I was not only in private practice, I was not only a hands-on dad coaching my son's cricket team. All of a sudden, I was doing my podcast and all those things as well, doing these workshops as well. But all of a sudden, I was on top of that studying at university, and then on top of that, lecturing. But not only lecturing, but learning how to be a lecturer. So first time round, very new, very green to the topic, learning how to do everything. So it's been a big couple of months, and I say that to sort of pre-frame this because in some ways I feel like I've talked to Stephanie a lot about this challenge as we've gone along, and she's talked a lot about just how fantastic she feels and how her energy has increased so much, how she's been sleeping better, how her mind has been more clear, she's been more productive. Both of us have lost quite a significant amount of weight, and that wasn't really our goal. We haven't been weight focused throughout the challenge. I have tracked it as we've gone along as a point of interest and just as a measure of what's happening, but haven't been focused on that as a goal or an outcome. However, we have both lost in that sort of 8 to 10 kilo range over the course of those 12 weeks. So it's sort of just an interesting note. Once again, not necessarily a specific goal, but an interesting note along the way. However, as I said, for me personally, I haven't felt those massive changes in terms of my energy, in terms of my mood, in terms of probably my sleep has been, I would say, better. However, I have had also at the same time a lot of late nights of prepping and getting organised for study and all those sort of things. So it's an interesting one for me where I don't necessarily feel like I've had those big changes. I do feel like for me, doing so much and perhaps being in what was clearly a significant calorie deficit over that time has been in some ways challenging in terms of my energy, particularly in the first half, the first sort of 6 weeks. I did find that quite challenging in terms of my energy, and it probably got better throughout the next 6 weeks. However, I do very confidently feel like as I now move forward from the challenge and perhaps do change and relax things a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second, that I will now start to see some of those benefits in terms of moving sort of more towards that maintenance phase, perhaps not quite in so much calorie deficit, but probably also not quite so busy. I also feel like going through that process, had I been doing all the things I've been doing without having done the challenge, that might have even been more difficult, right? So I might have actually seen that as being more challenging, more stressful, been more tired, been more stressed than I am if I've been trying to do that big load of work without this really clean lifestyle we've been living, all right? And so that's, I guess, just a bit of the rundown on how we went in terms of the challenge. However, what I really want to talk to you guys about tonight is about how to end the challenge successfully. Like, what happens next? I've done these 12 weeks. That's great. There's been some cool changes. But to be perfectly honest, if all I did this 12 weeks, saw some cool changes, got some great results, and then went straight back to the exact same lifestyle that I was living beforehand, then invariably nothing is going to have changed, right? I'm just going to gradually go back to that exact same spot I started at. I'm probably going to feel pretty bad about it. I might feel guilty. I might feel resentful about it. I might feel negative towards myself, feel like a bit of a failure. And I might even end up going back further than I was before because of those feelings and end up even unhealthier than I was to start with. As well as the fact that I would then be sort of yo-yoing, right? Because then I'd probably feel like I needed to do it again and then go back and do it again and go back. And that yo-yoing, that instability can be really unhealthy for your body, okay? I think that cycling in and out of caloric deficit or fasting or low carb or whatever it may be is probably quite natural when you think about it, right? In terms of the natural seasonal cycles, that would have been what I guess hunter-gatherers would have done all the time. There would have been times of plenty, there would have been times of drought, there would have been times of summer and abundance of fruit and availability of animals and all those sort of things, and then there would have been times of winter where there was less fruits and vegetables available and perhaps less ability to get out there and hunt and catch what you wanted to as well, right? So I think there is a natural seasonal variation there, but that was still within a frame of healthy whole foods, healthy natural movement, mindsets and rest and relaxation, balance, all of those sort of things. So I think that's a little bit different to what we're talking about here, where perhaps we're talking about that kind of natural lifestyle versus perhaps a more unnatural lifestyle, which is kind of our modern world, right? With perhaps less movement and exercise, more sedentary lifestyles, more stress, more availability of foods that perhaps aren't necessarily congruent with our genetic makeup and our evolution, right? And so I think that's a different picture if we're cycling in and out of that versus cycling in and out of perhaps seasonal variations. I hope that's making sense. I'm kind of going off on a bit of tangent that I didn't intend on talking about, but I think it's interesting nonetheless, and hopefully you do too. So if you're listening in, and I can see that a few people are listening in here, let me know. Let me know if you think that's interesting and if that made sense to you. But yeah, what I'm sort of leading into there is why diets, challenges, boot camps, whatever it might be, why short term often doesn't work. And I know many of you will have done this before. Like I said, whether it was a diet, whether it was a 21-day boot camp or a 3-month boot camp, or whether it was a 30-day challenge, the 21-day challenge that are really popular, right? Is that often what we do is we yo-yo and we do it for a while, we see positive change, we feel great. Often then somewhere along the way, we have a day where everything, the shit hits the fan, right? And then all of a sudden, that day we don't quite manage to keep it up, right? And so all of a sudden, we fall off the wagon, right? That one day turns into 2 days, turns into 5 days, turns into 10 days, and all of a sudden we've kind of lost all of that progress. Often because we hadn't really got clear on A, why we were doing what we were doing, B, what we were going to do, and then 3, how we were going to navigate our way out of that challenge and back into a more longer term lifestyle change, right? And so I'll talk about that in a second in terms of how to do those steps really effectively. But when we don't do those steps, what tends to happen is at some stage we fall off the wagon either by intention or by accident. We end up sinking back to where we started, or as I said, often worse than where we started. And then it makes it harder to try again. It makes it harder to start again because we feel bad about ourselves, we guilt ourselves, we beat ourselves up, and then it makes it harder to make lifestyle change again. And this is why I often talk about, rather than doing a challenge, right, is doing Kaizen, small steps of constant and never-ending improvement, right? Changing something tiny, setting yourself up for success so that you can make that positive change, so that you get that positive reinforcement, and it makes it easier to make positive changes again in the future and create a bit of a snowball effect. Right? So that's one way to do it. Right? However, as I said, I acknowledge that there can also be benefit to doing short-term challenges so long as we approach it with the right mindset. Right? And so some of those benefits might be what we call a homeostatic reset. Right? And what that means is that we tend to have a homeostatic level, all right? And so we're seeing this a lot in the research in terms of, obviously we've already known this idea of homeostasis, that your body wants to kind of return to a set point, right? So your temperature wants to return to a set point, your blood pressure wants to try and return to a set point, all of those sort of things. But we've seen that as well in the research in terms of, for example, people's weight. That people tend to have a homeostatic level, and when they do these sort of short-term diets, and they tend to keep coming back to that same homeostatic level. However, if we can create a change like this, and if we can do it for long enough, we can actually start to bump that and create a shift in that homeostatic level, either up or down, that we can then have the opportunity to be able to maintain and make a significant longer-term change. Okay. One of the other benefits of doing a short-term challenge is that it can actually help you break through some limiting beliefs, okay? And so what that means is that sometimes we'll have things in our world or in our life, and I'll talk about one of these in a second with Stephanie, but we'll have things where we think, well, you know what, there's nothing we can do about it, right? It can't shift. I've tried to change it. It didn't work. I can't do it, right? People often have these sort of thoughts around their bodies, where they look at other people and think, well, yeah, those people are good at fitness, right? Those people are... Dieting works for them. Their bodies change easier than mine. They have different metabolism. They have different, whatever it may be. We tell ourselves these stories about our body and why our body isn't going to respond the same as someone else's body. And sometimes doing these short-term challenges, because it is more intense over a shorter period of time, we can get more significant change over a short period of time. And that can really help to shift those mindsets and allow us to see that we too can change, And that can allow us to then move forward from there and see, a different world of possibilities. And maybe the short-term challenge won't get you to that change and enable you to maintain that change forever, but it allows you to see that it's possible. And it maybe then later on you might take a slightly different, a slightly slower, a slightly more consistent approach that will eventually allow you to get there. But regardless, that change in mindset, that change in belief that's happened as a result of that short-term change is what allows you to realize that it's possible if you just go about it in a sustainable way. Once again, motivation then comes into that, right? It's obviously very motivating when you do see changes. And, for a lot of people, it is changes on the scales that they go for. Once again, I don't think that's the best thing to go for. I think there are other better measures of health and well-being than just the scales. I think there are lots of really unhealthy ways to lose weight. I think there are lots of unhealthy mindsets around losing weight. And so I don't necessarily think that weight should be your goal. You need to find, things that align better with your purpose. What is it that you want to be able to do? Who is it that you want to be? How is it that you want to impact this world? And what are the lifestyle changes that will allow you to do that? Okay. So once again, I'll come back to that in a second and have a bit more of a chat about the why. And then the other benefit of doing a challenge like this is it allows you often to be more consistent than you otherwise would be, right? Because if you set it for a chunk of time, right, whether that's 21 days, whether that's 30 days, whether that's 12 weeks, you've got an end point there. And in some ways that allows you, it makes it easier for you to do it properly for that period of time because there's an end point. And obviously what that allows you once again is to, when you do it more consistently like that, you often do see greater change. That then allows you to gain those benefits of the homeostatic reset, the breakthrough of your beliefs, the motivation when you do see those changes, right, because you're doing it more consistently over that period of time. What that allows then is in the future is for you to see what benefit there is in being more consistent, right? Because so often we sort of set out to do something like this and we set ourselves a goal of a lifestyle change that we want to make, and we often kind of lie to ourselves. I don't know if you guys do this. I've certainly done this before. Let me know in the comments if you've done this. But we often kind of lie to ourselves about the lifestyle changes that we're making, and we lie to ourselves that we're doing it more often or more consistently than we really are. And then when we don't get the results, once again, we come back to those beliefs of, well, it doesn't work for me, I can't do it, it's too hard, whatever that may be, right? And so I think the consistency you're able to get by doing a short-term challenge and the results you're able to see as a result of that can be really beneficial in later on setting yourself up a long-term habit or a lifestyle change that is going to set yourself up for success. All right? So then let's talk about that, right? So how do we then, if we do that short-term challenge, if we do see some really positive change, if we have made some and realize that there are some benefits to what we've done, how do we then convert that into a lifestyle change as opposed to just a short-term yo-yo, right? And so I think that, as always, when I talk about this stuff, often the first thing we need to be able to do is get really clear on your purpose. Who are you? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? How do you want to impact the world, right? And so for me, when I come back to this, I always think of three things, right? One is that I want to create a positive impact in the health and well-being of the world, right? Literally the entire planet, right? I want everyone to be healthier and more well as a result of my impact on this world, okay? Number two is that I want to create a healthy environment for my family to grow old in, okay? And so I've changed that slightly. It used to be for my kids to grow up in, and now I've realised as I get older that they're not necessarily kids anymore, they're becoming young adults. My family's going to expand at some stage, presumably, where it might not just be my kids, it might be my kids and their kids, right? And see, I want them to be healthy over a longer period of time. So my number two why is now creating a healthy environment for my family to grow old in. And number three is having fun along the way, right? And so this is the filter that I apply everything through when I think about setting a challenge, but also what I think about, well, which aspects of this challenge do I want to keep moving forwards? And so I'm going to go through them in a second and talk to you about that in each of the aspects of the challenge that I've taken on and kind of explain to you how that fits together. But I think that's the first step. You have to have a really clear idea of your purpose, and that needs to be the filter that you run all of those short-term changes through to decide which of them you want to convert into long-term lifestyle changes. Okay, and so then you can then analyze your lifestyle changes that you've made against that. You know, are they relevant? Are they achievable? Okay, so you want to make sure that A, they're relevant, right? If they're not helping you achieve your purpose in life, then what's the point, right? And you've got to really analyze that. You've got to really look at that, because sometimes the links aren't necessarily linear. They aren't necessarily really obvious. And sometimes it takes a bit of work to make those links. But it's really important if you can do that work, because it will help you with your motivation, right? Sorry, I think there's someone rattling on my door then. It's gonna be anyway. So are they relevant, and then are they achievable, right? So you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success, right? You want to make changes that you know you can succeed and that you can then snowball and you can build upon later, okay? So make sure that they're relevant and make sure that they're achievable. And don't feel like you have to adopt all of those changes now, right? There might be things that you've done throughout the challenge where you think, you know what, that is really good. Like, I noticed really positive change when I did that, and I know that that's good for me in the long term, and I know that that's going to help move me closer to achieving my purpose in life. However, it's not necessarily achievable for me right now to keep doing that in the way that was doing it, right? So what that might mean is you might take on that same challenge in a smaller way. So it might be, you know, rather than exercising 6 times a day, or 6 times a week, you might exercise 2 times a week, you know, or you might change the way, or you might just park it for a while and go, you know what, there's other aspects of this challenge I think that are more important for me right now, more likely to set myself up for success, to help me move closer towards my purpose, that I want to change first. And then once I've succeeded at those, I'm going to introduce these other aspects too and move those forward as well. So that's okay. Don't think you have to change everything right away. Don't think you have to maintain all of the aspects of the challenge straight away, even if you thought that they were positive and beneficial, right? But it is worthwhile, I think, creating a plan to reinforce the relevance of those things. Okay, and what that means is you get really clear on your why, you get really clear on your purpose, you get really clear on how those changes are helping you achieve your purpose, and so you create really strong links between the two. But then you set yourself up a plan to actually keep reinforcing those as you go forward, right? So you might put quotes or affirmations or mantras that you want to have around your house, right? So it might be that, you know, I exercise 4 times a week because it gives me the energy to play with my kids, right? Whatever that is for you, you know, you're going to keep reinforcing how doing that activity helps you achieve your purpose in life, right? You know, so it might be that me exercising helps me create a healthier environment for my kids because A, I'm more energetic to help them, and B, I'm setting a better example for them of the importance of movement in their lives, right? That's how you link it back to your purpose, and that's what will intrinsically motivate you, all right? And so we often talk about the difference between, or inspire you, I should say. We often talk about the difference between motivation and inspiration, right? Motivation is doing the 12-week challenge, right? You get motivated, you think, this is great, I'm going to do it. And you get to the end of the 12-week challenge, and then you're like, well, I'm done. I'm going to go. Everyone's been asking me this. What are you going to do on your first day off of the challenge? What are you going to drink? What are you going to eat? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I wasn't motivated for this challenge. I was inspired for this challenge. Right? I'm doing it because it gets me closer to my life purpose. And as a result, I don't feel like I need to go and throw all those changes and benefits into the bin. In fact, I'm actually inspired to keep on going with many of them. Because I really resonated and connected with why I was doing it. And so when I saw those benefits, I don't want to lose them. I want to keep them going as much as I can and for as long as I can, right? So creating a plan for yourself, you know, whether that is, like I said, a place where you put them, whether that's a schedule you put in your calendar that you're going to read through that, your purpose, but also your links between the activities you do and your purpose, to constantly keep you inspired from inside out rather than externally motivated by the challenge. That's going to help you make changes for the longer term. It's really important that you do define what success means to you as well, right? Because sometimes when we're not clear on that, sometimes we're chasing other people's models of success. what we see as what other people are goaling for, and we're actually, their purpose in life may be totally different to our purpose in life, and so their definition of success may be really different to our definition of success as well. And so it's really important when you do and want to make these lifestyle changes, and particularly if you want to make sure that you're able to stay inspired to do it for the long term, it's really important that they're congruent and aligned with your definition of success and your life purpose as well. And then make sure that you've got the resources that you need. All right. So once again, this is about setting yourself up for success, and those resources may be, making sure you're surrounded with the right foods and the right tools for cooking the foods that you want to keep doing going forward. Make it easy for yourself. Make sure you've got the appropriate equipment for you to do your exercise, whether that's an app on your phone, whether that's a YouTube video, whether that's a particular piece of equipment in your home gym that you're able to do to make this easier for yourself, right? Make sure you've got the tools to set yourself up for success. That might be an accountability partner. That might be a mentor that you lean on. You might be jumping into Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group and asking me or one of the other members of the group to keep you accountable, whatever that may be. But then it's also really worthwhile identifying the potential challenges and creating rules or solutions. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the rules that I've got and some of the solutions I've got and some of the potential challenges that I identified in converting this short-term challenge into a long-term challenge in a second. But I think that's a really important thing to do is, don't just assume that everything's going to be rosy going forward, right? Assume that there are going to be challenges. Assume that it is going to be at times easy and at times difficult, because that's life. I'm here to tell you. And plan for that. Have a plan for when things go wrong and what you're going to do about it. And that really is one of the best ways to set yourself up for success, right? Not just blindly, overly optimistic where you're assuming everything's going to go beautifully, but creating a plan for it, okay? And then also have a plan to celebrate success, right? So once again, once you define what success looks like for you, you might want to have a plan there to say, well, at this particular juncture, if I'm doing well at this, then I want to be able to celebrate that. And what does that look like? Am I celebrating that in a way that's congruent with my life purpose, or am I celebrating it in a way that shows that I was really kind of motivated rather than inspired? Am I celebrating in a way that actually takes me away from my life purpose and somewhat sabotages the progress I've made, right? So those are the things I think you want to think about in terms of making sustainable change. Right? Get clear on your purpose. Make sure it's relevant and achievable. Don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Right? Create a plan to reinforce the relevance and to create those links between your plan and your life purpose. Define what success means to you. Make sure you've got the resources. Preempt the challenges and the solutions to them. And plan to celebrate. Plan what you're going to do when you win. So I'm going to show you I'm going to go through a little bit of what that looks like for me coming out of our 12-week challenge, right? So I looked at the various different aspects of the challenge, being dairy-free, right? Now I've been dairy-free for the most part, like 99.9% of the time for well over a decade. So I'm going to keep doing that. That was an easy one for me. My gut doesn't deal that well with dairy anyway, so I find that a really easy one to keep to. And I feel like that's the best for me. I feel like from an evolutionary perspective, we didn't consume dairy. I don't think we need dairy. I think there are better sources of calcium, and I think my body works better on those other sources of calcium. Right? So for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer that being dairy-free is going to help me function at my best. It's a great way for my family to live because I think it's good for them and for their guts as well. And when I feel good and I'm functioning well, then I'm more able to have fun. So that fits in with my life purpose, right? Snacking on meats, nuts, vegetables, and limited fruit. I think I'm going to keep doing that, right? I don't feel like I need to introduce any other snacks into that, right? There might be the occasional time when I'll have a little bit of a paleo treat, and that might be a raw treat or a paleo bar or something like that. But for the most part, I really feel like being more precise with that snacking was really beneficial and not too hard. Not too much. I don't think that's going to stop me from having fun. There will be times. And in fact, that's the other thing I should have talked about in terms of making it sustainable is, you don't have to be militant about it, right? Like there are going to be exceptions to these rules, right? If it's my birthday and we've made paleo, frozen cashew cheesecake, then I'm going to have a slice. Right? In fact, you know what? There is a frozen cashew cheesecake in our freezer right now because I made it for Timmy's birthday when we were in the middle of this challenge, and I haven't had any yet. And I will, sometime in the next week, have a slice of that and consume some of that. I'll make sure I save some for you, Steffi, don't worry, because she's away at the moment. And so she's finishing the challenge and not at home. So I won't eat all the cake before you get home, I promise. But for the most part, I'm going to stick to the snacking. I think that worked really well. The 2 hours of fasting I'm going to stick to as well. I've been doing one kind of 24-hour fast a day. In fact, I did, our plan for this one was to do 2 16-hour fasts. For the most part, I did pretty much like a 20 to 24-hour fast. Essentially what it meant was on Tuesdays and Fridays, I didn't eat until dinner. Sometimes on Monday and Thursday, I had eaten a little bit later, so it wasn't a full 24 hours, but it was probably always at least 20 hours. And I felt like that worked really well for me. It was really easy for me to add in an extra day to that. It kind of makes it a bit like the 5 and 2 diet that's been really popular recently. And so I felt that was really easy, and I feel like that's a good one for me to maintain. I feel like that fits in with my goals in terms of having a positive impact on the health and well-being of the world. I feel like from a health perspective, I had been making more exceptions in terms of my diet. I had been putting on some weight, particularly around the mid-region, which I know is not healthy, especially for men. I wasn't like fat, I wasn't obese, but I had put on weight there around the midsection. I know that's not healthy, especially for men. It's not metabolically healthy, and so I wasn't being the best example to the world around me of an optimal, healthy human being. And I wasn't being the best example of the diet, lifestyle, exercise regime that I think is best and that I do talk to and recommend people. It needed a bit of, it could be better, right? And so I do feel like having made these fine tunes, and one of them being that extended fasting twice a week instead of once, I'm feeling leaner, I'm feeling fitter, I'm performing better in the gym, I feel like I look better, and I think that does allow me to be a more positive influence on the world around me. I think it does allow me to be a more positive example to my kids and to be more energetic and to be more productive and to be more fun with the kids and to do all the fun things that I like to do. So I'm happy to keep doing that one. Definitely the playful exercise 6 times a week. I've decided that moving forward I'm going to bump that back a little bit to 5 days a week. And there's a reason for that, is that particularly I think over the last few months where, as I said, I have been very busy. It has been a bit of a stressful time because I've had a lot going on. There have been days where I thought, you know what, I could really benefit from just not doing this exercise today. Like I feel like today is the day I need to just let my body rest and recharge a little bit. And so because generally Saturday I don't do any structured exercise, I often do move. I often, walk with the kids or go for a jog or, kayak or cycle or whatever we're doing, kind of fun stuff out and about. But Saturday's kind of been my day off, but I've oftentimes felt like having one other day off during the week would have been beneficial. So my kind of plan going forward is that one day a week, on that day, whatever day it is during the week, where I feel like, today my body I think would benefit more from a rest rather than an exercise, I'm just going to give myself that rest, right? So probably being a little bit more intuitive with that in terms of the movement and having that little bit more flexibility, I think will be healthier for my body, ultimately healthier for my mind, will allow my body to de-stress a little bit, will allow my body to recover a little bit more, but also will retain a lot of those benefits I've had from being that little bit more consistent with the exercise, right? So rather than that some weeks it only been 2 or 3 times a week, it's been consistently now, has been 6 times a week, will now going forward be 5 times a week, and I think that'll still continue to be really beneficial. In terms of the alcohol, I'm not going to do no alcohol, right? I have done no alcohol for 12 weeks, but I feel like there's room there for me to be more flexible with that and still achieve my life goals, particularly the fun. I do want to be able to have a drink with my friends from time to time. I want to be able to relax and enjoy a drink in a social situation from time to time. Often Wednesday night when I play indoor cricket with my mates, we want to have a drink after the game and just chat and relax and sort of shoot the breeze. But I do want to put some stricter sort of limits around that, right? So I had been having more cider, occasionally beer, than I had been previously. So, beer, wine, cider. And more often than not, I'd like to change that to be a cleaner form of alcohol, a less caloric form of alcohol. And so my plan is to have gin and soda, which is one of the best, cleanest, simplest forms of alcohol you can have. It doesn't have all the calories that you get from the beer and the cider. It's not as inflammatory for your body. It's still alcohol, so alcohol is alcohol. We're not really, I don't think, designed to consume alcohol. I think the recommendations around alcohol are a bit skewed and a bit biased. And so I think ultimately, if it was purely about the health and well-being of my body from a biochemical point of view, I think no alcohol would be the best. However, when we include all of the social aspects and the mental, physical, all of the social aspects, then I think for me, limited alcohol and clean alcohol is the way that I want to go. So I've set myself some kind of rules and guidelines around that. Once again, there is room for a little bit of wiggle room there. I'm not going to be totally militant about it, but my real sort of guideline around this is not drinking more than twice a week. On those occasions when I am drinking, not having more than 2 drinks, with one exception to that a month, right? So it's like once a month, there'll be something that comes up. It might be my birthday, it might be Steph's birthday, it might be our anniversary, whatever it is, a party of some description that I think is going to be really fun with my mates, there'll be something that comes up once a month where I think, that's the one day I'm going to pick for this month. That's a worthy exception. And so I'll make that, I'll have a great night, and I won't feel guilty about it because I know that the rest of the month I'm only drinking 2 nights a week and not more than 2 drinks those nights, and it's clean and I'm drinking good stuff. That's my goal. That's my rule moving forwards. And then I'm going to keep being grain and pseudo-grain free. Once again, I had allowed a little bit more gluten-free grains to enter into my diet, maybe some gluten-free toast and my bacon and eggs in the morning or whatever that may be. And I've definitely, realised over the course of this challenge that really wasn't working for me, and that actually it's not that hard to do that. And that I quite enjoy just having my big breakfast without the gluten and without the gluten-free toast, and I'm perfectly happy doing that. And so I'm just going to continue doing that. That was an easy change that I think allows my body to be a lot less inflamed. Has me less of a weak belly going on. It means that my body, I think, is better biochemically. I think my body is better hormonally when I do that. So that's certainly something I'm going to stick with. Potato and sweet potato free. I definitely think sticking to potato free is something I want to do moving forwards. I feel like they're a bit of a calorie dense food, and they're not particularly nutrient dense food, and so I just feel like there are better options. We've been doing a lot more pumpkin as I guess a replacement for it over the course of this challenge, as well as I guess just more salads and greens and all sorts of other different vegetables, capsicum, and I feel like I haven't really missed out a lot there, and there's not a lot of benefit to those potatoes, so I'm not planning on reintroducing them. The sweet potatoes I kind of have missed because we were having a lot of sweet potato beforehand, and I would say once again in terms of a healthy balanced diet, I think we were having too much sweet potato beforehand. So doing 12 weeks without any at all, I think has been really beneficial. Has allowed for a real reset and a recalibration in terms of that. But I do think that having sweet potato twice a week would be a healthy balance for us, or at least for me. And so that's my plan going forward. Not having sweet potato more than twice a week, but allowing some of that to come back into the diet, because I definitely do think sweet potato is a healthier alternative than potato, just in terms of the GI and the calories that are in it and the nutrient density that's in it. I think it's a better option than potato. So if we're going to do it, I'm going to do sweet potato, but only twice a week, because I don't want to get back to having quite so much of that. Once again, there's a lot of carbs in those potatoes. There's a lot of calories in those potatoes, and I think there are better foods, more nutrient-dense foods that I can include and more variety of nutrients that I can include, as opposed to just having sweet potato all the time. And then the final one, honey, dried fruit, and refined sugar free. And once again, I think I will allow back in a little bit of honey and a little bit of dried fruit, but a lot less than before. You're going to be a lot more mindful of that. I'm really not going to be adding honey to my tea or coffee for the vast majority of the time. I'm going to try and really keep limiting the amount of dried fruit and honey. I might have a little bit of dried fruit with my nuts every now and then, or I might have a paleo bar every now and then that has some dried fruit in it. But I'm going to be mindful that doesn't sort of creep up and once again end up being a healthy food that I'm overeating. Because I've seen the difference of not doing it, and I'm happy with the changes that have happened from not doing it. And so I want to be able to now move into a maintenance phase where I keep all that progress that I've made, and not just, once again, not just let it all go. Okay, and so that's what I'm going to do. And then the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to keep repeating challenges and N=1 experiments. Experiments where I try. It might not be a whole 12-week challenge. It might just be one aspect of it that I'm going to try and refine, do it differently for a period of time, see the results, and keep repeating this cycle of analysis and process and reconnection with my purpose forever. I'm going to keep doing that for the rest of my life. I'm going to keep having small steps of continual, gradual, and never-ending improvement for the rest of my life. Keep refining it because I just want to be the healthiest person I can be. I want to be the best example I can be of health and well-being for the world. I want to create as much positive impact on the health and well-being of the world as I can. I want to do everything I can to be a positive role model and to create a healthy environment for my family to grow old in. And I want to have lots of fun and be really playful along the way as well. So I'm going to keep doing these challenges. I'm going to keep doing these N=1 experiments. If you like those, then make sure you're following me in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group, and you'll see me doing these sort of challenges over and over again. As I've done with this 12-week challenges, I'm still currently doing with my toe spacer challenge. If you've been following that, that's been a slow and steady one that I'll keep reporting in on. But there'll be more of these in the future because once again, I plan on this. This is part of my lifestyle, is taking on challenges, is making changes, is monitoring the progress, and constantly trying to grow and learn and evolve and get closer to the best version of myself and the most inspirational version of myself for the community around me. So hopefully that all makes sense. It's a little bit more self-indulgent than I planned on being, talking about what I'm doing in terms of my challenge. But the reason for that was because I wanted to show you, I guess, my thinking and how I plan on doing it going forward, in the hope that you can take the aspects of that work for you to help you if you do a challenge, or if you plan on doing a challenge, or if you've previously done a challenge, to figure out how to do it successfully so that you're not just yo-yoing up and down, so that you're converting those changes you've made into real sustainable results, lifestyle changes that you can take forward with you for the rest of your life, and so that you can keep doing that and keep snowballing that to just keep getting better and better and better in terms of your health and well-being, and in terms of your alignment with your purpose, and in terms of the achievement of your life purpose, which is ultimately what I want for all of you. So thank you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one tonight. Hopefully this has been useful for you. Feel free to leave any comments, any questions you've got about this below this video, especially in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group. That is the best place to go to ask me questions and to get feedback or mentoring or advice from me. So just look up Healthy Lifestyle Choices with Brett Hill on Facebook and find that there. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. I will be doing an advanced care workshop next month. It's going to be all about how to get the best out of chiropractic care, but that's also going to mean, even if you're not getting chiropractic care, how to get the best out of your health and well-being. I hope you guys all join me for that one. Once again, that will be the best place to find out about that is in my Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group. So if that's something you're interested in, once again, sign up there, but you'll hear more about that in the next few weeks. Otherwise, have a fantastic evening. Hopefully I'll see you in the Healthy Lifestyle Choices Facebook group, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.